Good evening and welcome in to this live from the lily pad Love-a-Duckie Facebook Live on this Thursday evening. My name is Helen Jennings. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based here in the UK, and as you can see I am busy preparing still for our projects this evening. Between now and Easter, Thursday evenings are a bit of a rush to get out, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to still come in and play. It just means I need to be a little bit more on the ball and hopefully a bit prepared. But I think that is possibly no bad thing. That's not a bad Lenten exercise, attempting to be a little bit more prepared. So let me move that out of the way for now. And let's come on to what we're going to be doing this evening. So, as we were on Monday, we're going to be looking at this Timeless Tulips beautiful stamp set with its coordinating punch. Trouble when we've got lights on is that it all reflects, but it's got that lovely coordinating punch. So this was the card. No, this wasn't the card that we did on Monday. This is the card that I have done for a challenge, actually. This week, oh, something's gone crashing into the ground. I spotted a challenge, and I thought, oh, let's see if we can mix that up with our project of the week this week. So that's what that is. That is the card I did in the challenge. For this challenge, the Global Design Project Challenge this week. So I've entered that in there. So you'll find details of that on my blog. But that indeed wasn't the card that we did on Monday. And looking around, I can't even see the card that we did on Monday. But the safe place that I've put that in may come back to me. I'm surrounded by tulip cards at the moment because I have got a stamper stack tomorrow that is also using the tulip card, so I've got some things around in preparation for that. I've also got a couple of cards here. Ooh, got a light leaping off the side. I've got a couple of cards here I've done also using the tulips, using some slightly different techniques. This one is the one that's just finished doing its tour with the county tour, so the classes that I take around the county. So this is the tulip card that we did for that class, and for this one I stamped them, stamped the tulips on my stamper artist. I created a template by punching out the tulip and the leaf to create a template for my stamper artist, lined up my stamps in it, and for 3 of them I stamped them with pineapple punch. And then for these 2 I went back in and did with some daubing. I daubed some Grapefruit Grove on the top and bottom and re-stamped them. With this one I daubed some lovely lipstick on the top and bottom to create those sort of multi-tonal tulips. And then these 2 are stamped originally with Grapefruit Grove, and then again have got lovely lipstick top and bottom. So that gave them a bit more depth of colour. This one here I stamped in crushed curry, and then and these are garden green, and I've used the watercolour pencils just to add a bit more depth of colour to those ones. The one that we did on Monday we used was a watercolour effect, and we used our stamping white markers to drag out the colour on that one. But details of that one will all go up on my blog later today, hopefully. I shall put all the details of the cards that we've created during our Facebook Lives this week, as I always do. The other card I've got here is actually one that I've created using the Pleased as Punch Designer Series paper, which looks like this. Well, the tulip one does. There's also umbrellas and hearts and little flowers. It's a gorgeous pack of paper in the most beautiful colours. There's the hearts, there's the umbrellas, There's the little flowers, there's the tulips, and they all coordinate with various punches. So the heart punches, the umbrella punch, obviously the tulip punch, and the little small blooms punch. So it's a gorgeous pack of paper, and that is one of the items that's in the coordinations range at the moment that you can still get while stocks last, but only up until the 31st of March or until it runs out, whichever happens sooner. So if, like me, you love that paper and you want to create some cards like this, which is simply punched out flowers and leaves with the, in actual fact, the stems I've cut from the paper as well, so even that is paper. So that's all designer series paper on there. The flowers, the leaves and the stems are all designer series paper. So if you want to create projects like that, you need to get your hands on that Please Does Punch paper sooner rather than later. But without further ado, let us have a look at what we're going to do today. Where shall we start? Let's start with this one, seeing as these bits appear to be sitting on the top. I've got various pieces that I've already cut out. I've got some dies here ready to do a bit more cutting out. We obviously have our stamp set. We have our punch, but I don't think we're going to need the punch for this one. There's some ribbon we might want to add into it. I think that's as good to go. And then I've got some ink. I have got Daffodil Delight, Granny Apple Green, Poppy Parade and Pumpkin Pie. So some beautiful bright inks there. And I have created a card base out of some Granny Apple Green. And then I've used the largest of the stitched rectangles, which is just here, to cut out a piece of Whisper White card. That wants to go that side, I think. So that Whisper White card will eventually come onto that Granny Apple Green card base. But for now, and I've got some other pieces of Granny Apple Green that I've cut out there, and I've used these two dies here, and I'll explain why in a minute. So let's find some punches. Punches? No, let's find some blocks. Let's see, what shall we have? I'll just grab a few little blocks there. And we will grab some of our tulips. Now, I think we'll go for all three tulips on this one. We've got our large tulip, medium tulip, and our little bud. Come on, little bud. Just there. So we've got a variety of tulip sizes. We'll come back to leaves and things in a minute. We'll get our flowers in place first, I think, and then we can decide where we want our stems and our leaves. We can build up our picture. So, piece of Whisper White card, cup of tea, and let's start with eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's go with pumpkin pie, seeing as that's on the top. And I think we'll take this large tulip. Now, as you notice, I've got my foam piercing mat underneath, because these are photopolymer stamps. They are also distinctive stamps, which means that you get that sort of variety of shading and the more depth of detail in the stamp. So there we are. We have a beautiful pumpkin pie tulip. Let's have another one coming down here, and we'll leave that and we'll see. We might decide to put another one on, but we will wait and see. Let's bring in the medium sized tulip. Let's swap colours and go for some Poppy Parade. We'll have one coming here. We have one one snuggled in there. Perhaps one coming round there. And then I'll pop that to one side. Let's pick up the little bud and some Daffodil Delight. This one coming down here. Snuggle one in up there, just slightly. Let's see how we feel about that when we've added in our stems and things. So let's get a long block. Let's get a H block. And let's take this straightish, it's not quite straight, but straighter than the other one. And we'll ink that up with some Granny Apple Green. Have that come in here. Then go in here. Now I'm actually going to have a look and see if I can find a little post-it note, and I'm going to stamp a red tulip on the top of this post-it note. And get my snips and cut it out. It's a relatively easy sort of shape to cut out, and we're going to create a mask because I need my stems to go behind those red tulips. Obviously we could do some masking and put in even more tulips, but for now I think we're just going to go with let's have that coming down there, and then this one. I missed one there, didn't I? We'll come move that back along in a minute. We'll have this one. I'll swing that round and have this one coming down here. And then I need to mask that again because I've missed this little yellow one at the top here. Trying to do it wrong-handed and that's not working. There we go. And then this one will have coming down here. There, that's better. That's joined those tulips up. Now let's pick some of our leaves. What shall we go with? So we're not looking necessarily to line these leaves up in the punch, so we can go for any of the leaves. We don't have to have them coming don't have to have the whole leaf on, we can just have pieces of leaf. Now I might also let me just also stamp the little tulip bud, because it would be quite nice to have a leaf coming up the top there, I think, to give us a bit of balance. So these are sort of more tulips in the garden blowing in the wind rather than tulips neatly arranged in a vase. I want to have that sort of coming from this stem. Miss that tulip, have it coming up here. We might do one the other side as well. Let's bring back in our red. And that stem is about there. Right, okay, so we have a whole little garden full of tulips blowing in the wind just there. We'll take that. Actually no, we're going to wait, I think, before we do a greeting. I have got a couple of little marks on there where I've caught the edge of the block, but we can work around that. There's no mistakes in crafting, just opportunities for embellishment. That's what we will see those as. Let me just move those things out of the way for a moment, because I'm going to bring in those granny apple green stitched rectangles I've bought cut, and I'm also going to bring in the 2 rectangles that are just one size smaller than our granny apple green. I'm going to bring back in my big shot. And let's bring that through. We'll place our garden full of tulips on there. And then what I will do, if I can reach it because my microphone's in a bit of a tangle, is we'll have a look and get the magnetic base plate out. That will hold this nice and still. So let's put our acrylic plate on there, and then that means we can juggle around with this and then know that they're going to stay, hopefully. So we need to centre that up the best we can, and obviously I'm trying to look round a camera, which is not the best, but I think that's pretty okay. And then let's take this other one and we will centre that again in there. And then we need our other acrylic plate that's buried under there. There you are. Come on out. Come out, wherever you are. So let's run that through, minding that we don't knock my tea over in the process. There are some disasters that we just don't want to deal with, and that's one of them. I'll take it back for good measure. Pop that down on the floor, out of the way for now. So let's pop out these tulips. out these dies. I'm going to just pop them back on this magnetic sheet for now. And this one. So now we have our beautiful picture chopped up. And what we're going to do is we're going to layer that on there, and this one on here, and then this one on the top, and we shall have a beautiful triple layered card that rather than having we've just used, rather than stamping over the edges of various pieces of card, we've just cut 3 layers out of the one bit of card, and then layered that up to give us our dimension, to give us our separate layers. I was looking around because somewhere I've got a little box with some glues in that I've taken out with me this week, and I knew that my snail was in there, so let's grab my snail and let's line that up, centre that on there, and then now you have a couple of choices with this, and it might really depend on whether you are intending to hand deliver your card or post your card. Now, because I have just committed to try and send 40 cards in 40 days, so a card a day for the next 40 days of Lent, I'm going to leave mine relatively flat rather than building it up with foam pads. So I could put dimensionals underneath here and make it sort of a more prominent 3 layers, but I'm not actually going to do that. I'm actually going to stick it on flat so that it remains quite flat for posting, but it doesn't detract from the sense of the layering. So we're just looking to line up those pieces, about like that, I think. And then this one, about like that. So there we have our triple layer tulips. Nice bright colours, which tulips very often are, aren't they? Nice bright colours. Now we still want a sentiment on that. Let's have a look. We just want a happy birthday. Do we want to decisions. Quite like the idea of just having a little hello. We get that to fit. down there. So many decisions. I'm going to just find a little piece of white card. That smallish block. Let's just put our hello on there, and I think we're going to go for Poppy Parade because that's quite a nice strong colour. Take our little mini trimmer. Leave a bit of a tail on that side. Let's just chop that side off. It's not ever so straight. I'm just going to, using my scissors, make a bit of a banner end on that. Oh, come on off. And then I think I'll have a look and see if I've got just a little squidge of Granny Apple Green that we can stick that on. I think just there, and we'll have a dimensional or two on the back. I've got some ribbon on standby. Actually, we have our little, I think, we'll go there. And then we'll just take a few little sparklies and just add a bit of sparkle to the proceedings. A few little rhinestones. So we have a very pretty, bright, summery, well, sort of spring, late spring, sunshiny, triple layer stamped card just there, using those stitch rectangle dies to cut out both our rectangles and our mats, so they've all got a nice stitched effect on them. So really quite jolly. So there's a card where our tulips have just been stamped as they are, and they haven't been fussed with, just literally took the ink, took the stamp, stamped them onto that piece of Whisper White card, and only then have we fiddled about with it, as it were. For our second card, we're going to go for a slightly different feel. We're going to go for a more vintagey look. Just going to grab my spritz and spritz up my stamping scrub so that we can get ready to start again. So there's our hello, there's our happy birthday, we have a happy Mother's Day, we haven't used that for this one, there's a get well soon, we have our big tulip, we're going to need that. We have our stem, we're going to need that. We'll clean this leaf up and pop that one away because we're actually going to be using the one that coordinates with the punch this time. So the greeting, and somewhere I have got some more tulips, there they are. So there's our little tulip bud and our medium-sized tulip. Let's pop those to one side for a minute, and then let's bring in what I've prepared so far for our next card. So some very different colours. We're looking at Merry Merlot and Rococo Rose, and I've got some papers. I've got a Rococo Rose sponge, and this time I've got some papers, so they're from the Pressed Petal suite of papers, pack of papers. So these are really beautiful. They're one of those packs where the paper is just slightly thinner than our standard DSP, but that does mean that you get more in the pack, and that makes it fantastic for things like envelopes and all those sorts of things. But we're going to use it today as our mats on our card. So I've cut a couple of those pieces. So these are all sort of very botanical themed. This one's got script on it, which is, if I remember right, actually quotes from a sort of diary gardening journal that somebody had written, and here's some more sort of images from old gardening books and things. So that all seemed to fit quite nicely with the idea of tulips, because obviously we find them in the garden, and surprisingly. So Merry Merlot, Mossy Meadow. So rather than going from the bright colour palette, which we did with the last card, these were all colours from the bright collection. This time these colours are both to be found in the subtle collection, because since we had a revamp 12 months more ago, there was some colour added in amongst the greys and the browns and things in the subtle collection, and it was Merry Merlot, Mossy Meadow and Night of Navy. So I have picked out that Merry Merlot and that Mossy Meadow ink pad just there. So what I've got is a Merry Merlot card base, and then I have taken a piece of Rococo Rose, and I've cut a mat to sit on the front of our card base. And then from this paper here, I've cut that. So this one is, so for here in the UK, a standard card base measures 10.5 by 14.9. So this one is 10 by 14.4. This one is 9. In fact, that looks as if that Cocoa Rose is not quite the right size. I obviously had a bit of a mental blip when I did that. Let's see if this is big enough for me to cut another one. 14.4 by 10. That one looks as if that one is 9.5. Yes, it was. That's okay, we can use that one. So 14.4 by 10. This one is 13.9 by 9.5, and this is 13.4 by 9. So each of those comes down a little bit, and that gives us some different layers and things to put on our card. And then we have, so say, our large tulip, we have our stem, and we have our curly leaf. So both the tulip and the leaf fit into our punch. Now I'm going to take, rather than stamping onto Whisper White, I'm actually going to stamp using Merry Merlot with our tulip onto some Rococo Rose card. So that will give us some sort of different shading without necessarily having to do anything to it. So I'm going to stamp one tulip in Merry Merlot. And I'm going to stamp 2 of these leaves. So let's clean those up. And then I'm going to take some Mossy Meadow cardstock and a Mossy Meadow ink pad. And I'm going to stamp one stem in Mossy Meadow, and again I'm going to stamp 2 leaves. I don't know if I want 2 leaves, but we will see. So let us take our punch now. I'm going to start with the tulip and line that up. And there's one tulip, and then we've got these 2 leaves, only they're not going to be leaves. One and 2. And then we're going to take our Mossy Meadow leaves. Actually, what I'm going to do, because what I don't want to do, is punch a great big hole in the middle of my stem with my punch. So let's just line that up. And line that up. We've accumulated quite a bit of, somebody once told me this is called punch poo. So we've, yes, accumulated quite a bit of punch poo there. So let's get rid of that so we don't mistakenly pick that up instead of our tulips and leaves, and then let's just cut out this stem. And down the other side. Sorry, that's very blurry for you. I'm just getting it so it's near enough so that I can see. So there we have our tulip. We're going to build up, and these are going to be 3D'd . That one won't actually go on there, will it? So we're just going to 3D that one. So we're going to lift this one up. Put that on some dimensionals to give this a bit of a 3D effect on our tulip. We could possibly fiddle about with that one, but I don't think we're going to worry. We're just going to have our very vintagey coloured tulip there that we're going to build up onto our card in a minute. But what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to take my snips and I'm going to rough up the edge of my paper a bit. Because we want this to look a bit grungy, oldie worldy. To do the same with this bit. I'm not worried the fact that it is tearing a bit and is even more grungy. That's absolutely fine, because grunge is what I'm looking for. So that's all good, looking a bit battered and sorry for itself. That's the look we're after. And I'm going to take my Merry Merlot ink and my sponge and just starting off the edge. I'm going to sponge the edges of this paper, and it may well curl up a little bit where we've distressed it a bit. But that's all good. So this is obviously going to show up a bit more on this paler paper. There's our papers. Hi Div. All sort of grunged up and sponged. Let's sponge the edge of this card as well while we're at it. While we've got our sponge in hand, let's go for it. It's always less is more when you're sponging. You don't want to press too hard. Better to build your colour up. You can't take it off. You can add more in. Right, some, oh, that light has nosedived again. Let's just give this a bit of a rub and get rid of the worst of the ink on there. So we have our card base, and then we have our inked edge bits of paper, and I'm planning on stacking them so that they're on a sort of higgledy-piggledy. Just looking for my snail, there it is. So let's have this one, so it's on a little bit of an angle that way. And we'll have this one, put this pretty paper on the back. Lovely, isn't it? But we're going to cover that up. Let's have this so it's coming on a bit of an angle. That way. And have that one so it's coming on a bit of an angle that way. So lots of twisting and turning and roundabout. Just thinking it'd be quite nice to have something in the background there to I'm going to cut, this is out of the Stitch So Sweetly dies, label out of some more Cocoa Rose card. And as we've sponged everything else, we'll also sponge that label. So these Sweetly Stitched are, as they would suggest, they're all sort of stitched around the edges. They're really lovely. You get the sort of rectangle scalloped stitched dies, and then you also get this sort of little selection of small labels that are just perfect for sentiments and things. But I've actually picked the biggest of those label dies. And we'll be able to sit that on there. Might have a little look and see. We have a couple of Rococo Rose ribbons. Or the other alternative would be, if I can find it, as we've gone down a vintagey theme, would be to add in a touch of lace. That would be quite pretty. So let's just put a line of nail down the back of that label just so that I can twirl some lace. Just to come down a bit further. That's better. And then we have where have you gone, tulip? Then we have the mystery of the disappearing tulip. Aha! It has fallen on the floor. There is a tulip. There are leaves. There's a spare one of those if I can't find the other of those. The other thing I'm missing is my stem. How did that all get to fall on the floor? Just realised that I've not put my microphone actually in the phone. So let's actually do that for the last few minutes. You might be able to hear me then. Well, how frustrating. That has all fallen on the floor. So we will just stamp another mossy meadow. Hi, Chrissy. I'm having a day of more haste, less speed, because I'm aware that I'm on a tight schedule today. Let's try and cut that out again. So apologies for the sound quality earlier. I've only just plugged my mic in. I'm wearing my mic, just hadn't plugged it into my phone. So let's cut round that stem. And let's build this up. Now, I think I'm just going to layer this on flat. Again, because I'm looking to send cards out and I don't want to be making too much of a headache in terms of postage for myself. And let's have our stem coming down there. And we'll put the main tulip head, we'll put on straight. This other little bit, so this of course was the leaf shape that we've stamped in the same colour, because as well as being a leaf shape, we can use it to give our tulip a little bit of dimension. It just gives it another layer. So a bit of a 3D effect going on with that tulip. And then I think we'll put some dimensionals on our leaves as well, or at least one leaf if not both. I think that one I'll have sitting flat. So that's a very sort of vintagey feel to the tulip. What we could have done is we could have sponged around the edge of those. I think I'm actually going to curtail that stem a little bit so that it's sitting on the bottom there. Hi Roz. So we've got some grunged up paper that's been sponged. We've got some lace in there. So that's a very different feel from the sort of bright breezy ones that we've had before. Let's have a look. We've got some Rococo Rose gems here. The faceted dots. You could perhaps just add a few of those as something a little bit different. They're really quite pretty, these faceted dots, and those are in the in colours. So that again is in that Rococo Rose. And I'm not going to put a greeting on the front of that one. I'm going to wait and see. As I said with my other card just now, I saw earlier about the during Lent to do 40 cards in 40 days, and I thought that was a really lovely idea. And although I'm a day late, because of course Lent started yesterday, it was Ash Wednesday yesterday, I'm a day late starting, but the 40 days of Lent don't include Sundays. So what I will do is I will look to make sure that I distribute a card on Sunday, and then that will be me caught up, and so I should be able to do 40 cards in 40 days, which is what I'm going to aim to do. I gave my first card out today, and the lady that received it was delighted that I'd thought of her and given her a card. So number 1 has gone, only another 39 to go. So I'm going to leave that without a greeting on, because then I can use it, or I can either add a sentiment to it, or I can use it as a just because card to be sent out as one of those 40 that I'm going to send out during Lent. So there we have our 2 cards for today. So we have a really bright summery late spring reds and oranges and yellows in this sort of triple stamped layered card, and as a very different feel we have that really vintagey Rococo Rose and Merry Merlot card just there with some mossy meadow thrown in. So a bit of in colour and a bit of those colours from the subtle range. So 2 very different cards to add in to some of the other cards that we were looking at earlier. So some that have been using watercolour pencils, some that have been using daubers, and some that are using that beautiful DSP that you can gather up in the part of the coordination collection. So thank you for joining me. I am going to go and woof down some dinner, and then I'm off out the door. But as I say, details of these cards, as they always are, will the cards that we've done on our Facebook Lives this week will go up on my blog, hopefully before I hit my bed tonight. And these Facebook Lives, as always, will go up on my YouTube channel so that you can catch any of them over there. And I apologise once more for the sound quality of the first bit of the video where I'd forgotten to plug my mic in. What can you do? You just can't get the staff. Have a really lovely rest of the week. If you're living anywhere local to me, I am having an open house on Saturday between 11 and 2, where you can either come and buy cards, although if you're a card maker that's probably the last thing you need, but you can also come and browse some of my crafty de-stash stuff and some of my retired items. If you are loving the tulips and want an opportunity to come and play with them, again, if you are local, I do have a Stamp Stack class tomorrow afternoon between 1:30 and 4, and I have got room around the table to squeeze a couple of extra people if you would like to come and join us. Other than that, I will be back on Monday morning when we'll be playing with something new, so I'll see you then.